Good day, everyone, and welcome to our presentation of the Cloud Control Matrix Implementation Guidelines version 2, Securing the Cloud with the Shared Security Responsibility Model. I'm Lefteris Skouteris, Program Manager for the Cloud Control Matrix Working Group. Joining us today are three of our distinguished experts from the CCM Working Group, who played a pivotal role in shaping the development of the implementation guidelines and who will be sharing their insights about the project as well as its significance to the cloud industry, right? Tim, welcome in this session. Thank you very much for joining. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves before we get started?
Sure. Thanks, Lefteris. Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is John Ose. I have over 25 years of experience in information technology, IT, and security professional certifications covering cloud security, audit, cybersecurity, risks and controls, data privacy, software testing, project management, to name but a few. I currently work as an information security consultant in the financial services sector in the UK. That is me. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Kerry or David, go ahead, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Kerry Steele. I'm a principal at the on the payments and cloud advisory practice at Coalfire. I've also been working in the information security field for over 2 decades now. David?
And I'm David Serdla. I'm a senior IT auditor with Camden Partners. I have over 20 years of experience in the industry as well, mainly in audit and information security. And I am pleased to be on the panel today.
Thank you very much, guys. All right, so let's change slides. All right, so let's take a quick look into our agenda for today's, right? So I'm going to start in this presentation with a quick overview about the Cloud Control Matrix, since the implementation guidelines version 2 are tailored to the controls within the standard, right? Then I will turn it over to our subject matter experts to explain a little bit better to us what is the shared security responsibility model in the cloud, and understand also better how those responsibilities are assigned per service providers and service cloud customers in the cloud, right? Then we will continue with a brief discussion about the project itself, its structure, its content, just to understand what the team has been doing in the past couple of months. And finally, and most importantly, I would say, I will invite our experts to help us a little bit better understand, for a more practical perspective, in what ways cloud organizations can leverage the CCM implementation guidelines so that they can benefit from this work and use it in their cloud security and compliance programs, right? So I'll get started very quickly with an overview on CSA and the CCM, right? So a few words about CSA. It was founded back in 2009. It is a non-profit organization dedicated to promoting best practices for securing cloud computing environments. CSA brings together industry subject matter experts, organizations, corporate members, governments to address challenges of cloud security through our research program, by providing training and education packages, certification in various events, etc., right? Currently, CSA manages over 25 active working groups that are conducting research in related fields of cloud computing and cloud security. One of which, of course, is the Cloud Control Matrix Working Group, which drives the development and evolution of the standard, the Cloud Control Matrix, and its underlying components, such as the Implementation Guidelines version 2, which is the topic of today's presentation. The CCM is, briefly speaking about that, is a comprehensive cybersecurity control framework developed by our experts from the industry, essentially subject matter experts in the CCM working group, to aid cloud organization to assess and manage risks related to the adoption of cloud services. It provides a set of structured and standardized security domains and control specifications to address, with an aim to address security and privacy concerns associated with cloud computing. The CCM, it's currently at its version 4, and it's composed of a total of 17 cloud security domains, the ones that you see currently on screen, that further break down into more granular control specifications, which are of a total number of 197 controls. With regards to our project, the CCM working group has delivered extensive and comprehensive implementation guidelines that are tailored to all these 197 controls. And they have been developed having in mind the safe security responsibility model in order to assist cloud service providers and customers to define a demarcation line, if you like, on their responsibilities for the implementation of the CCM controls on either end. The CCM core controls are complemented with several other components, as you can see here, that are listed, that are useful for cloud organizations to adopt and use as part of their security and compliance programs. We don't have the time to actually delve into each one of them. I think what we can mention here is that the guidelines that we have developed can be leveraged in conjunction with all these components. For instance, they can be used in conjunction with the CSA security questionnaire called CAKE, as you can see, and for controls implementation assessments. They can be used in conjunction with the mappings activities that we conduct of the CCM and other frameworks in order to better understand how controls are implemented across different control frameworks. They can be used in understanding better how metrics are created and implemented, and so on and so forth, right? Here, what I could also mention is that the implementation guidelines version 2 are going to replace completely the previous version 1 of the guidelines. It's a far superior document, as our experts also will illustrate shortly, and it's going to be available for free via our website in 3 formats within the master Excel spreadsheet of the standard, the CCM, and also in PDF and machine readable formats. Right, so that's a quick overview on the CCM. Here, and I would like to invite one of our experts to help us a little bit better understand what the SSRM, the Shared Security Responsibility Model, means for the cloud, and how this can be interpreted by cloud service providers and customers. So I'm turning this over to David.
Thank you, Lefteris. So when it comes to roles and responsibilities in the cloud, generally, a rather well-known analogy for the ownership of responsibilities between the cloud service provider and the cloud service customer is the pizza as a service model. This model is commonly used to compare the different allocations of the technology ownership and responsibilities found in the fully on-premises infrastructures compared to the big 3 cloud service models: the infrastructure as a service, the platform as a service, and the software as a service. And I think although most of us agree that talking about pizza is quite appetizing, and this model presents a very helpful picture of the general technology ownership and responsibilities in our modern cloud environments. Security controls are neither all equally the responsibility of the CSP and the CSC, nor are they always, unfortunately, divided along well-defined lines. And there are plenty of services that do not themselves fall neatly in the infrastructure, platform, and software as a service models. So the next slide kind of presents the typical security responsibilities in the cloud. So we can say that the cloud service provider is responsible for security of the cloud, and the cloud service customer is responsible for its security within the cloud. We also know that there are areas of responsibilities where both the CSP and the CSC have a part. And it's often this area of shared responsibility that's the most interesting, and if not, unfortunately, sometimes the most ambiguous. As a typical representation, these describe the most expected, the most common ways that responsibilities are allocated, but they certainly do not describe every case. And of course, we also know that the specific responsibilities depend on the cloud service offering itself, the particular controls and capabilities in question, and sometimes unique and specific agreement among the parties. So an exact and specific allocation of security responsibilities can't be identified, or even less comprehensively documented in one place for each and every CSP, CSC, cloud offering, and control available in the market today. However, considerable thought can be given and a very well-reasoned principles identified for each of the specific controls of the CCM. And that's what the SSRM guidance is aimed to provide as it's integrated into the standard. On the next slide, we'll see how the SSRM is involved with different components of the overall control framework. So within the CCM version 4 controls, particularly within the supply chain management, transparency, and accountability control domain, controls are specified for SSRM policies and procedures, SSRM supply chain, SSRM guidance, SSRM control ownership, SSRM documentation review, SSRM control implementation, among others. And for each control within the CCM version 4, the matrix also indicates a typical control applicability and ownership of the control that is applied for the IIS, the PaaS, and the software as a service models. On the CAIC, the Consensus Assessment Initiative Questionnaire, we also have a column for service providers to indicate the control ownerships and responsibilities within the supply chain as applied to their service offerings. So that brings us to the implementation guidance version 2. This guidance has been extended to include the per control detailed guidance of the cloud shared security responsibilities model, which is an effort that has spanned almost a year and a half, and a project that's culminating with the guidance that we're presenting today. Carrie and John will share some highlights of that project.
Thank you very much, David, for the very insightful overview on the SSRM. Now jumping on into more details about the project, Carrie and John, would you like to take over?
Sure. So, excuse me. So this was no small endeavor. The implementation guidelines were developed over a 14-month period, and the project reflects the contributions from multiple stakeholders, including CSPs, CSCs, SMEs, and the broader community through the open peer review process. During the final open peer review phase, the guidelines were reviewed by each of the hyperscalers, and their feedback has been integrated into the final version of the guidelines. So as you can see here, the project management alone was no small effort. So Lefteris, as you transition to the next slide, I'd certainly like to say thank you for your leadership and from project inception to completion. Effectively managing the project timeline, managing the challenges among subject matter experts with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different time zones. So and occasional herding of cats. So thank you for your leadership.
I thank you, Kerry. Go ahead.
See, and so as you can see on this slide, one of the primary objectives of the project was to identify the CCM control ownership and the implementation responsibilities across each of the cloud service delivery models. So IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS models. This included defining responsibilities and best practices for both the CSPs and CSCs. And as described, David described earlier, depending on how you like to make pizza, the responsibilities can vary widely. As shown in the slide, while the private cloud customer is entirely responsible for their systems and data, the CSCs can potentially inherit control responsibility from their CSP. And of course, the level of inheritance and responsibility depends on the specific details of the CSP service offering for the CSC, and varies also varies depending on the cloud service delivery model. So this slide also depicts how the CSC could inherit more control responsibility for a cloud service that's delivered as a SaaS solution versus a PaaS or IaaS solution. So this capability to inherit control responsibility for both implementing and maintaining compliance controls from a CSP requires a clear definition of who's responsible for what. And that's exactly what this project set out to define, and why these guidelines are really valuable to the broader community as a whole. John?
Thank you, Kerry. Right. So looking at this slide, basically this slide gives you an overview of the structure of the CCM Implementation Guidelines version 2. So over here, you've actually got three distinct tables. Table 1 is the CCM control and comprising of a high level and sourcing control title. Now, in this particular example, this control falls under the audit and assurance domain, abbreviated as A&A, which are distinct domains. And further down, you've got then the control ID, and a unique ID that actually identifies each control within a domain. Then finally, still on table 1, you've got control specification. So basically, this actually describes the purpose of the control, and crucially, what do we actually set to achieve as the objective of the control. Now, looking at table 2 is the shared security responsibility model, SSRM for short, expression. So the focus here is on control ownership by cloud architecture types, infrastructure as a service, IaaS, platform as a service, PaaS, and software as a service, SaaS. So over here, we have determined if a particular control applies to any or all the three cloud service models. So again, for this particular example, that's control ID A&A, ownership is shared between the cloud service provider, CSP, and the cloud service consumer or customer, CSC, and across the three cloud service models. Additionally, there is no handoff, I would say, but a kind of a handshake as far as this particular control is concerned. Hence, the control implementation is independent. I'm going to elaborate more on the next slide. Now, if you look at table 3, so table 3 is basically the SSRM rationale plus implementation guidelines. So this, to me, is the most crucial or important section of the implementation guideline. So looking at this table 3, I think it actually amplifies four key things. Number 1, managing security, risks, and controls in the cloud is a shared responsibility between the cloud service provider and the cloud service consumer. We just cannot overemphasize that. However, at the point where responsibility transitions from the provider to the consumer, it can be a great area, so to speak, especially when you've got multiple vendors and managed service providers involved in operating those controls. And number 2, different cloud service models, IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, affect the ways that responsibilities are shared between the CSPs and the customers. Still on what this table amplifies, number 3, when it comes to managing ongoing relationship with providers, for me, it is vitally important to establish from the outset clear roles and responsibilities. Number 4, and finally, implementation and operation of security controls require cooperation and a clear demarcation of responsibility between the customer and the cloud service provider. Again, looking at this slide, so this slide provides further details and definition of control ownership. Now, a control can be owned exclusively by the cloud service provider or the cloud service customer. Now, in between that, additionally, a control can be shared between the CSP and the CSC, that's the cloud service consumer, but independent, or shared but dependent. In other words, there is a kind of a handshake, and a handoff of how the control will be implemented. So that's just a high-level summary of this particular slide. Thank you.
Much appreciated, guys. We are now, we have provided, a brief overview of, what the project looked like, and a look inside the actual guideline structure and how the SSRM control ownership definitions or expressions stand, right? Of course, due to the limited time, we couldn't delve into details. So to move to our next agenda point, which is also maybe the most important topic in the presentation today, I would like to invite you, all of you, to help us interpret the guidelines from a more practical perspective, and how or in what ways cloud organizations may leverage these guidelines in order to strengthen their security programs. Would you like to share your thoughts on this?
I'll start. So the overall CCM control framework, it has both prescriptive and descriptive applications of the SSRM. And I believe one of the major beneficial ways of using the guidelines is as a point of reference to promote clarity and transparency among the CSPs and the CSCs, primarily to identify those starting points for discussion and confirmation, and to validate the understandings, and really to avoid invalid assumptions and misunderstandings, in ensuring that the controls important to the organization are appropriately assigned and addressed. Just as the larger CCM control framework has historically fostered considerations, communication, and transparency about the controls in the cloud environment through conversations between the providers and customers, documentation, and approaches such as the CAKE, the Consensus Assessment Initiative Questionnaire, the SSRM can likewise encourage specific and detailed consideration, communication, and transparency about the responsibilities within the cloud service offerings, so that the key areas are not overlooked or under considered in the planning, the due diligence, and the oversight processes. So from my perspective, that is the biggest. It's a descriptive use of the guidance, but it's, to me, one of the most helpful.
Thanks, David. The rest of the team, would you like to elaborate a little bit further on the rest of the points about, for instance, the next two, how organizations can leverage the guidelines in context of the mappings we do of CCM to other frameworks, or in context of assessments on controls implementations?
Sure, Lefteris. I'm gonna
Yep.
share my thoughts here. So regarding the question, can I leverage the guidelines to guide the implementation of controls in both frameworks? The short answer is absolutely. What's important here to note is that once the CCM has been mapped to a framework, CSCs can leverage the SSRM to provide guidance on how CSP services could support the CSC's responsibilities to achieve and maintain their compliance with their environment. So, for example, the CCM was recently mapped to the latest version of the payment card industry data security standard, or PCI DSS. With this mapping, the there's 62 controls where there's partial alignment and 90 controls where there's a full one-to-one alignment. And that means that through this project, CSCs have guidance on how they could implement, inherit, or partially inherit the responsibilities of PCI DSS control requirements from their CSP for their cloud environment. Regarding the implementation assessments, so as a CSC, what should I expect that the CSP has implemented? A couple of thoughts here. So it's the Cloud Security Alliance maintains what's called the STAR registry, and that's for organizations and service providers that with a cloud environment, a cloud service offering, where they want to attest to that they've are aligned with the cloud control matrix controls. All the major hyperscalers have submitted their cakes and for STAR level 1 certification, and many have obtained the STAR level 2 certification. So this demonstrates that hyperscalers are in alignment with the CCM and the SSRM implementation guidelines. So CSCs or customers should ensure that their CSPs are STAR level 1 or level 2 certified and listed in the STAR registry. And for those cloud service providers that are looking for guidance on how to, what are the best practices that cloud service providers should follow, that's reflected in these implementation guidelines. So it provides both CSPs the guidance on the best practices as well as CSCs on how they can vet their CSPs and potentially leverage the cake and the SSRM and these guidelines for their procurement processes. John, you have any thoughts?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Kerry. So I'll be looking at the last two bullet point on this slide. So for me, really, organization can actually leverage the CCM guidelines in determining policy requirements. So, if you look at the CCM implementation guidelines, it will help organizations plug any gaps, in their cloud governance. Governance is based on a framework of policies, procedures, controls designed to promote transparency and accountability to define standards. So for me, really, that's vitally important that we have policies in place, procedures in place, and crucially too, via robust contract, service level agreement, SLAs, your master service agreement, MSAs, you want to ensure the stakeholder requirements, expectations, and agreed upon objectives are met. So for me, really, these are the various ways that companies, organizations can actually leverage the CCM guideline to support their ongoing cloud adoption and management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Excellent points. We are getting close to the end of the presentation. Some conclusions here from my end. The CCM has been working on these guidelines, as Kerry mentioned earlier, for a period of 14 months. The guidelines are final. They have been released during the summit. And we are, expecting that they will be very helpful to aid cloud organizations to primarily, demystify the CCM control semantics. It is important to note that the implementation guidelines are a result of a collaborative effort between the community, the cloud service customers, and the major service providers, as also David pointed out earlier. This ensured that the guidelines set realistic expectations for both parties regarding their security responsibilities in the shared cloud infrastructure. Would also like to mention that this presentation forms the basis of a series of other presentations, 17 in number, that are going to follow, and that CSA is going to produce, where subject matter experts who were active in the development of the guidelines and who authored the guidelines, such as our experts today in the call, will be taking a deeper dive into the controls and the corresponding guidelines per each one of the 17 domains of the CCM. Yes, we have reached the end of our presentation. We don't have, unfortunately, much more time. Hope you have found it to be interesting. My special thanks to our experts for being with us. For any questions, feel free to reach out either to me or our support team. A kind invitation to to continue our discussion about the cloud control matrix and ongoing projects within our CCM working group calls to all. Thank you for your time and wish you a great rest of the day.